Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to share with you the top 10 essential Ark Dinos, so let's get into it. In at number 10 is the Thyla, and I'm sure by now you know why this creature is so good, and it really is, and the fact that it spawns on the island as well is an extremely useful thing for a creature to have like the Thyla, as ASA is the only version of Ark right now which has only the island available to it, which obviously means the Thyla is one of the best options right now in that game, and you should definitely tame one on ASA if you have ASA at the moment. And in the next 3 days, ASA is coming out on Xbox, so Xbox players really need to get into the action as well, but I'm sure they will. The Thyla is just a really popular creature, and obviously all of those climbing abilities makes this thing really good at traveling around the Ark map, and it also does have the damage to keep up with that as well, as anything which may run into you on your travels it can pretty much easily kill. Maybe not gigas, but I have seen it done before, especially with its bleed ability, which is an extremely useful thing for a creature like this to have. But you also want a good traveling mount, as flyer speed leveling and just speed leveling in general is now not a thing in Ark, and flyer speed leveling hasn't been a thing in Ark for ages. Obviously there is still the toggle, but a lot more people now aren't using movement speed, and if you're one of those people, and especially on servers, movement speed is not around anymore in ASA. On single player you can still toggle it like I've said, but you're going to get used to lower movement speed dinos now, even though I'm pretty sure the base movements of the creatures have been increased a little bit just to make them a lot more usable. And as you can see here, that is the bleed ability on which I was talking about. And I had someone comment on my video recently saying, why is the Kentro so tiny? Honestly, I don't know. The Thyla is actually pretty obscenely scaled compared to its actual size. It's more like Saber size. But, you know, sometimes Ark does that with things like the Giga, again, just to make them look more powerful. Obviously, they are more powerful creatures, and you should definitely get those. But the Thyla is extremely oversized in terms of its Ark model. So that is answering whoever commented that little quote there of why is the Kentro so tiny. The Thyla is just oversized, really. In at number 9 is the Beelzebufo, and many people will be like, why are you putting this thing above the Thyla on the list? Well, the Beelzebufo, in my opinion, has a more useful use than the Thyla, as there are some other creatures which you can kind of put in the place of the Thyla that will do some other things as well. Although the Thyla is still a very essential tame, obviously it is on this list. But the reason why I say the Beels is an essential creature, especially on the island with ASA right now, albeit this isn't ASA footage and the Thyla's was. I haven't updated it yet, I will in the future. The thing about the Beelzebufo, don't know why I'm spending this long just talking about it, the reason why this thing is such an essential creature isn't because it's a great swimmer, or it's quick, or it can travel. It's because when this thing eats insects, it will gather a lot of cementing paste, and considering insects do not have levels on ASA, it is easier than ever to get all of that cementing paste, which is absolutely insane, and you need to be cashing in on this on any map, which you can obviously find the Beelzebufo. Next up, we have the Basilosaurus, and this is by far the best bet for any ocean creature, especially for you PvE Ark players out there, as maybe there are some other Ark creatures which will deal a little bit more damage and are better suited for PvP ocean exploration. But in terms of PvE, these things are the best underwater cave dinos, and they actually do deal a significant amount of damage as well. Although sometimes I'll tame something like a Tuso or a Megalodon, I tend to skip the Mozo really in terms of dealing even more damage. But in terms of cave runs, which again are very essential on the island, as 2 of the island's caves, one required for the Megapithecus and one required for the Dragon, are underwater, and the Basilosaurus is your best bet. And the reason for that isn't just because this is a great swimmer and it's a great underwater creature, it is also immune to electric eels and jellyfish, and that is an absolute godsend for a creature to have, as no other creature really has that ability, and none of them that I can think of on the island have that ability, which again is extremely relevant as ASA only has the island at the moment. So if you're on the island or on ASA or on any map that has a Basilosaurus and underwater cave, get one. Now, the Stego is just one of those herbivores which every Ark player should tame at some point. Don't know why the glare is so extreme on ASA, but I guess that is just how this video is going to go. And sorry for the foliage as well, it's flickery, that isn't the video in any way, that is just ASA at the moment. Sorry for any inconveniences with the ASA B-roll, which is why I haven't been converting as much as you may think I have, as just it looks a bit buggy, and in some cases it just looks worse than the original ASE B-roll. But in terms of the Stegos uses and not the performance issues with ASA and graphical issues, this thing is one of the most useful herbivores, especially considering it's easy to tame, its saddle is unlocked at an early level, and it has a wealth of abilities that aren't just gathering berries. Although it can gather berries very well, and for some reason can fend off Microraptors very well as well, but that is probably because of its rider protection. Don't know why I said as well that many times in a sentence, but I guess it made sense, didn't it? But also in terms of its other abilities, ever since its TLC update came out, which isn't relevant in ASA, kind of is to ASC, but not really anymore. It has the sharpened plate, it has the hardened plate, and it has the heavy plate as well. The sharpened plate being used to gather berries and deal the most damage, the hardened plate being used to soak all of those turrets up, which is great for PvP, and the heavy plate being used to gather things like wood, which again is a very useful resource. And also you can whip its tail around and deal the bleed ability, although I haven't got that to work in ASA. I don't know if they removed it, hopefully not, but that does definitely work in ASE. For some reason I just haven't managed to get it to work for ASA. Next up is the UT, and also I'm going to put the Daedon in this spot as well, but I'm mainly going to be talking about the UT, but you'll see why the Daedon is relevant after I just talked about the UT a little bit more. In terms of the UT's use, especially on the island, it is great for bosses, and not being the creature to deal all of that damage to the boss. This is the creature which is going to buff up your creatures which are dealing damage. For the Broodmother, I would recommend Megatheriums. For the Megapithecus, I would recommend Rexes, and for the Dragon, I would recommend Theris. There for the island. On other maps, it may differ depending on what creatures are available to you. And in terms of the UT's use, this thing is going to buff your creatures up with the Courage Roar, and you can also use the Fear Roar as well, although most bosses, I'm pretty sure all bosses, exceed the size limit for that to work, but that is very useful outside of bosses, and especially if someone is on a Pteranodon and trying to raid your base. Get that UT out and do the Fear Roar. It will completely put them out of control of their mount, and then they won't be able to raid you anymore or scout your base or anything that they were trying to do. Very useful strategy for you PvP players out there. And in terms of the Daedon's use, in terms of when it is with the UT, you'll have the Daedon following the UT in a boss arena, and it is going to heal up your creatures as the Daedon has a passive healing ability. And in at number 5, we have the Theri. And the Theri is just one of those creatures which is like the Stego, but just on even more steroids. Although it is not as great for turret soaking, definitely use a Stego for that. But for a PvE player, not a PvP player, the Theri is going to be a lot more useful, as it will gather insane amounts of fiber, insane amounts of wood, insane amounts of thatch, and insane amounts of berries too. And its saddle is unlocked at level 69.
Nice.
And for common viewers of my channel, sorry, you've probably seen that in the last 6 or so videos. It's probably 3, isn't it? Not 6. Hyperbole, very good linguistics feature. In terms of the Theri's uses though, like I've said, great for gathering pretty much any natural resource, but they're also really great for the dragon boss fight, which I hinted about earlier when I was talking about the UT and the Daedon. And the reason for this isn't because it is more powerful than the Rex or the Megatherium, it is just that the dragon is particularly unfair to carnivores in that boss fight, and the Megatherium has a special buff to insects, which is why it's advised for the Broodmother, but obviously the dragon is not an insect, so the Theri is your best bet, as the fire isn't going to deal an insane amount of damage to a carnivore, because the Theri isn't a carnivore, and obviously the dragon is not an insect, so you're not going to use the Megatheriums there, which is why the Theri is used. And also, they're pretty good just for dealing damage in the general world as well, as obviously they have great big claws. Sadly, no bleed ability comes out of them, but they still deal good amounts of damage. Next up, we have the Rex, and it is no lie that the Rex is one of the best creatures in Ark, and it is one of the essentials. It is just the boss creature that you can use for any boss, and you can get away with it very easily, especially when paired with the UT and the Daedon. You pretty much can't go wrong unless you're doing the Moda with Rexes, but you can use your common sense on that one. The Rex is not an underwater creature by any means at all, but for pretty much any other boss, the Rex is just going to work every single time, apart from the Titans on extinction, but again, you can use your common sense for that too. And actually, I am really sad about the Rex's taming method in ASA, as now they have baby creatures too, meaning the Rex is one of the easiest creatures to tame in ASA. It's easier to tame than the UT. It's easier to tame than so many creatures, and it is as easy to tame as a Carno now. A Rex is so easy to kill, as they're really slow, and you can very easily trap them. No tranks are required, just pull out some spears and just whack loads of them into Rex, and then that Rex baby is yours, which kind of throws off the progression a bit, and especially because drops are now buffed even more, and Rex shadows are really easy to find in drops. It is really easy to get a Rex, like in your level 30s. Before you even get a Pteranodon, you can have a very high level Rex with an Ascendant Rex saddle, or at least a very high level Rex saddle in terms of like Ramshackle and higher. Obviously, you'll probably be going for Mastercraft or Journeyman or higher, and that is just, it definitely throws off the progression a lot compared to ASA, which I'm kind of sad about. But for you beginner Arc Tamers out there, the Rex is a very easy one now. In at number 3 is the Anky, and what a creature the Anky is. This is by far the best and most useful creature for gathering metal out there. And yes, you can technically get by with a metal pick. The Anky is going to make your life so much easier, which is why I'm calling it an essential Arc Tame. And you really need one. They are very easy to tame. They require pretty much no skill. Just, you don't even need a trap for this thing. You can just throw some tranks into it, and then it's knocked out, and then just chuck some Medjo berries in it, or any of the new berries which you'll find on ASA. Just any berry, not stimberries or narco berries, obviously. And then you have yourself an Anky in a matter of under an hour. It's insane how easy these things are, and also insane how good these things are. And obviously, you can put the Dodic in this position as well. Like, I put the UT and the Daedon in the kind of same position. I'm going to put the Dodic and the Anky here. The Dogit is just going to act as that metal hatchet. In at number 2 is the Bary, and the reason why you may be raging at your screens right now is, why would I put the Bary above the Anky? Metal is obviously going to be a much more important resource. Well, really, for loads of caves in the Ark game, especially on the island, I would say the Bary is one of the essential creatures, as you'll have a significantly harder time, and I think it just has that slight edge over the Anky in terms of its use case, which is, this is the best caving creature on the island, which again is extremely relevant because ASA only has the island. I can't stress it enough. I don't know why I've said it so many times in this video, but I feel I need to, as I just need to say, it is extremely relevant at the moment, and I don't really need the comments just saying, oh, Shadow Mains are so much better. That is your opinion. You can prefer the Shadow Main over the Baryonyx for caves. I'll still use the Baryonyx because I'm just that kind of person. I prefer the kind of more primitive side and using less OP creatures in my Ark journey. But if you want to use the Shadow Main in normal Ark, and when it comes out in ASA, then by all means use the Shadow Main. But right now, the Bary is your only option in ASA. You should definitely tame one. And they're very easy to tame, albeit they do spawn in the swamp, which is a little bit sad, and that is a little bit difficult. But they're very easy to trap, and then very easy to knock out. And remember, feed them fish and not normal meat, otherwise the tame won't work. And in at number 1 is the RG. And apart from on Gen 1 and on Arboration, the RG is the most essential Ark creature. The reason why I didn't say on Arboration and Gen 1 is because the flyers are not allowed on that map, and you just have to use a Bloodstalker. But in terms of the RG's uses, this thing is the best flyer in the game, really. Like, there's nothing which competes to the RG in terms of when you unlock the saddle for it, which is again in the 60s, which makes this thing an extremely useful tame. As yes, the Rhinoganatha, you may say, is a better flyer. That thing has a very difficult tame method, as an unlocked in the level 90s, which is not very practical compared to when you're getting the RG. And also, the RG can pick up a wealth of creatures as well, albeit not as much as the Rhinoganatha, but enough to get you by, and it can pick up the Anky as well for absolute insane metal gathering. And it also has weight reduction on things like metal, crystal, and obsidian, all resources which you'll be transporting across the map a lot. And in terms of it compared to the Pteranodon, it deals more damage, it has a regen buff when it kills dead bodies, it has a lot more stamina, it has an actual reasonable weight stat, And these things are just so much better. And they can even carry 2 creatures at the same time. One in its hands and one in its beak. Which is absolutely insane. Did I just say the RG had hands there? They have claws, they don't have hands. Don't know why I said that. And give it up for our patrons, Ekaterina Puchkova and Karina Thorne, Dominic Maciejewski, sorry about that name, and everyone else that's on this list. All the people I've mentioned are paid members, and if you feel like that's something you want a shout out at the end of the video, go join the Patreon or become a paid YouTube member.